Hi, I'm here with Richard, and I'm going to be asking him a few questions about his whole quantum computing and data storage ideas. Richard, how about you go ahead and give us an overall summary of it to begin with?
What I've come up with was inspired from what I feel was a message light years away, and it told me to draw a sphere. And what I drew was a glyph that reads from left to right as a sphere in 2 dimensions. But what this will do for computing is be able to compute to one. It'll be able to take the if you take the glyph and you put it in a particle accelerator and shoot it with a light photon, you can etch a silicon nanoparticle into a quantum juxtaposition, and the lattice would be each of the qubits of a crystalline nanoparticle and quantum juxtapositions to the circuitry of the algorithm, which is math, that will lead to exponential numbers and even be able to take information to the quadrillion spot. Next question.
Well, with all that you've just said, we already have the Hadron Collider set up. We already have, things they're working on in Indiana. But for the average everyday citizen, what would be the bare bones starting point technology that you would need before you can get to that point? What would be the first step along that route?
The glyph is 2 dimensional.
Yes, but for creating
So
that glyph,
for
the
creating
technology
that,
you would need to do that.
it might only take being laser etched into a metal to get the smallest precisions of nanoparticles at the smallest nanometer scales.
For people who don't know what that is, explain the scale of a nanometer versus, say, a millimeter to a centimeter to an inch. Break that down for them.
A nanometer is about I think I just read it was about 1,000 atoms, and about 300 of them are on the surface. So if you can imagine a pocket of atoms, and on the surface you hit this and you dent it, and you put it into a spin.
So essentially, the knife's edge of a knife's edge.
It, very
very
good,
fine.
very fine. It would be so fine we could
Theoretically, split air with it.
we could split. What's more important is that we can put data on a nanoparticle, and it would be changing silicon from a thing to almost a brain of a neural network of quantum position. So it might do things like freeze the fourth dimension of time in the crystal as it takes the memory of the computation.
So like
And then it's
microfilm on steroids, so to speak.
Yes.
Well, more advanced than that, obviously, because microfilm, is essentially just they took data and shrunk it down onto a thing of film. What you're just saying is same principle, except instead of on film, you're putting it on what the particles that make up atoms. So you are taking it to a smaller scale.
not only a smaller scale, but the 4 or 5 positions that you want for a quantum possibility is either both up spins, both down spins, an up and a down spin, and a reverse up and a down spin. And you can get you if you plant these things into the silicone with the spin that you injected, you have a physical qubit. And a physical qubit in space imprinted with the materium of silicone will have the same translucent effects of data storage and electrical computation circuitry on the quantum level, which is what they can't get right now in a quantum computer.
Okay, moving on with that idea, what are in your mind and in your words, the pros, the benefits for not just information storage, information technology, but for all of humankind moving forward, and what are the cons of this proposed technology?
The pros is that if this technology is not stolen from me, I fully intend to use it to have a free and open internet, a completely transparent government, completely transparent finance, implement things that promote freedom, promote liberty, promote justice, and only the people who would participate would benefit.
Obviously, like if you don't play the game, you can't win the prizes, so to speak.
Yeah. So the information to be gained, I propose the position of, could 100 quantum computations solve all of Earth's problems?
I think that it wouldn't solve it, but it would tell us these are your options to pick from. These are the ones it thinks that would be more likely to succeed, but at the end of the day, you would have to account for the human factor of, because we're the ones who have to make the decision based off of the choices it generates for us.
Okay, now think about this. On the nanoparticle scale, it's smaller than biology. So we could actually take data and imprint it into the silicone and then put spin to it and start creating DNA lattice inside the silicone crystal to see if it won't imitate life and start replicating in a loop form in the quantum computations or in machine learning or in actual physical growth of the crystal into a crystalline being. Because we're smaller than DNA at that point. We would be able to upload information of higher dimensions into people so it'd be intuitive, and people would still have their bodies and their essence, but they would have direct access to an intuitive world, and they would be able to feel the math. They'd be able to feel the what maybe imagination with a formula would look like.
So it would be bridging the gap between mechanical storage and biological storage. It would be the connecting piece then, for making
that would be
to make human access more akin to instantaneous. They could say, "Ooh, what's this?" and go and just request the information by thinking it. Then by hooking up to that, or.
But imagine viruses, designing a virus killer from the nanoparticle size.
Yeah, the
to be injected into your body, to go into your body and destroy virus cells.
That actually hits on my next question, because that's the pro, but the con is the fact that you would need to do that, because as humans we kind of are assholes sometimes, so we would be becoming you know, just like you look at the history of computers, every time there's a new virus, someone develops something that could stop the virus, and then somebody makes a better virus. That would fall under one of the cons, correct? If somebody gets in their mind that they just want to mess with everybody.
The level of security could actually be physical.
More biometric then?
Lower the more of the parts of the solid of reality than biometrical, like part of the wall. What if your wall was alive?
I would make sure my wall wasn't alive because, let's be honest, it's seen some things and I don't want it to talk. I mean, let's be honest. If your wall could talk, would you want it to?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd have fun. You know, especially if it got smarter and wasn't an
Hey.
NPC, but
Hey,
it was alive.
West Wall, what is tomorrow's winning lottery numbers? That's what I would use it for.
There would have to be no lottery because the random computations of the lottery would easily be solved in a quantum computation with the level of encryption and coding that would generate random numbers.
So if
you'd
you
be
would
able to generate all the numbers possible and then buy every single ticket and then win every single time.
Well, I believe that's why the lottery has rules against winning so many times under a set amount of time. But what if instead of getting rid of the lottery, you made it so that if anybody who had access to that quantum technology was not able to participate in it? But for average Joe Schmo who makes your milkshake at McDonald's when their ice cream machine isn't working.
No, my view of the lottery, and this could seem radical or whatever, but everybody who's a registered citizen, when the government does their quantitative easing, or not quantitative easing, their quarterly reports, and they find out that that GDP is up like 22%, then it'll just be liquidated out into your personal quantum computer account as fucking equity of being a citizen, and then fucking we should all be super
so instead
rich.
of the extra taxes going to the government, the excess just gets disbursed.
We'll be so productive with quantum computers. We'll have all debts eliminated. The Federal Reserve will be gone. We'll have the dollar pegged to an individual qubit in a lattice of silicone.
Now, for the average day-to-day citizen, what is that? Let's scale it down a little bit. Bear with me here. What is the most simplest, most obvious, just ease of use, convenience to the normal average day Joe Schmo? How would this help them? Say, you know how, like, instead of making popcorn on a stove, now you can make it in a microwave. What would that make easier? Just a day-to-day activity. What is one thing that would eliminate either the time or the hassle of doing?
Well, one thing that
like, would you be able to program it to, for example, wash, dry, and fold your laundry, or every time, make it so that your house could change its light bulbs. Something just simple, something ease of use that just you don't think's a hassle, but then once you don't have to do it anymore, you couldn't imagine how it was when you had to do it manually.
No, the thing with infrastructure as it stands now and quantum reality is that only the highest level of infrastructure needs the update. Everything else will become obsolete. And when it becomes obsolete, it'll be so easy to tear down and then build magnificent structures that completely envelop the senses. And then I imagine that everybody will have like a satellite link that will feed them information as fast as their thoughts, because a quantum computer is going to think, and it's going to think so many billions of times faster than all of our computers do now, that it's going to narrate to us like everything we'll ever possibly need, and then we'll be a star seeking faring civilization.
Now, what about the people who don't want that update? What if they just want to continue with life as they know it? They are, what's that word? Complacent with where they are, where the world is, where technology is. They don't see the need or the point for getting rid of.
We could have Earth ambassadors, people
Okay.
on Earth who are just ambassadors to Earth when aliens come by, or we have visitors, or we have other sorts of dimensional beings coming. They could just welcome them and then show them around and tour them what kind of machines we're working on. We're still going to have a lot of physical infrastructure to maintain, but necessities like politics in a world where everybody's individually secure to the quadrillionth space is going to make government possibly obsolete, because the wealth, your information and data will belong to you, and it will grow with you and help you out, and it will be able to map the brain into a computer process, and everything explodes from that moment.
Well, thank you for answering the questions, and we'll get more answered in the next video.
All right, thank you.